Hello everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And it's time for round 3 of the 4th annual multi-topic extravaganza. Vince, today we're going to begin with some questions that came from some other places besides just the comments of the announcement video I did, because we've been getting periodically lots of questions inside of the mailbox on YouTube, and also a little bit of stuff in my email. So here we go. And as always, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to click the link in the description, and that is for the video that I did the announcement for, and lots of people are leaving questions there. You can also leave a question as a personal message here on Geekvolution on YouTube. Are you ready, Vince?
I'm ready.
Let's see if we can get through like more than 6 or 7 of these this time. There are a lot of questions, and I feel like we're going to be here till the end of the year answering all these questions. So what you're saying is
pace up the pick, huh?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Let's do that.
Yeah, strike that, reverse it. Here we go. From Norman Berlin. If you had the chance, to travel through time, where would you go and why? When you were there, what would you do? And what is your favorite fictional time machine? Vince, if you could go back to any era, what would it be?
I would go back to the date of my birth, and I would slap myself in the face.
Really? Really? You would slap yourself in the face?
And I'd say, I'm you from the future! And then I'd run away, and my parents would be like, that guy's a jerk.
Yeah.
And then I'd grow up and I'd be like, it was totally me.
The beauty of that idea, Vince,
should have taken a picture,
is that if your parents weren't actually in the room, you would not affect the timeline at all, because if it was your birth, you wouldn't remember it.
That's a good point.
But really, where would you go?
Oh, man. I would probably go back and see some of, like, major concerts.
Oh, yeah? Okay, cool.
I would, I probably would, well, I'd go back and see, like, concerts that I would consider major, not necessarily that would be historically major. Like, I'd want to go back and see Cream perform. I'd want to go back and see the Blues Brothers perform. I'd want to go back and see Stray Cats in their prime. I mean, Brian Setzer is still touring and doing well, but the Stray Cats obviously are not together. I would go see these things. That's largely what I would do, and I'm sure there's something more profound I would do with it. But off the cuff, that's what I would do.
I got a couple. One thing is I would like to just go back and experience some of the early days of the height of science fiction. You know, I'd like to go back to the 40s and 50s, and especially if I could meet certain authors and filmmakers and people in their prime. That's a thing. I would, obviously, an obvious thing for me to say, but it's true, would be, you know, go back and see if I can get myself on the set somehow and go to early Star Trek, and also see comic books at the height of World War II. That's a thing. But World War II in general has always been a period that fascinates me, and like we fictionalize it, we dramatize it a lot. Like there's a lot of World War II stuff, but somehow it doesn't make me any less interested in it. That's a period that I really like, because I don't know, it's a period that feels almost modern, you know what I mean? So like
we could almost do a video on World War II itself.
Yeah. I mean,
at least the era.
One of the reasons I like, you know, thinking about that era so much is that it feels so long ago, but it doesn't feel long ago at all. It's this weird kind of contradiction, you know what I mean, where it's hard to imagine, even as much time as has passed now, that like we had Nazis that soon, you know, I mean, like not that long ago, and that you know, those kinds of horrible things were happening to people less than 100 years ago. It's
a time period where the villains were clear who they were.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, I think,
much less than 100 years, you know, 60 years ago. And then another thing that I would do is I would go back to Tudor England and see some Shakespeare and see what England was like during Elizabeth's reign, because she is a very she's always been a figure in history that I find very interesting and is very mysterious, and there's a lot of choices she made that or that people are curious about what exactly was going through her head and why she did certain things, and there's a lot of stuff we just don't know that would be really nice to know. So anyway, favorite fictional time machine, Vince?
Oh man, TARDIS. It's easy, but that's the one I like.
I guess the obvious thing is the DeLorean. I really like the time machine from the 50s film, The Time Machine.
Yeah.
That's a really neat one.
That is a cool one. Even the remake was pretty cool looking.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on. King's got some questions, and I'm going to go with this one. And both of these, I did look at these early because they're long. But both of these would make for good GNN topics, Vince. But here's one that we can cover real quickly.
Man, he's ready to graduate. His essay is already here.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot to bring my blue book with me to answer this essay question. King says, why is it that people in marketing assume that in order to attract children to product, they need to make it look cute or simplistic? Two things initially brought this to mind. One is The Secret of NIMH, and the other is An American Tail. The cover art to both films were dramatically changed from beautifully stylized drawings that wonderfully represent the films to new, colorful, and more kid-friendly box art. On top of that, new funny sounds were added to the re-release of An American Tail for reasons I simply do not understand. Time for the facepalm. The Secret of NIMH is a story about a mouse trying to save her sick son and having to get aside from the rats of NIMH, who were altered and given intelligence by man. The film, he just wrote the back of the box. The film goes on to show that their newfound intellect led to scientific advancements, socio-moral, political quandaries, and for some, a lust for power. An American Tail is a film about a Jewish family being forced to immigrate to America to avoid death and persecution in Russia, only to find new abuse and oppression in the land of no cats and opportunity. Why is there a need for false advertisement? What do you think, Vince?
Oh my gosh. I mean, is there a need for false advertisement? I don't feel like there is. I feel like depending on how you sell it, I mean, depending on what it is kind of gives you how you should sell that. But I think that the idea is that it's essentially an underestimation of the audience.
Yes.
And so we're saying that kids can't appreciate something unless it looks like this. Now, that being said, you go back far enough and you have these beautifully rendered, really interesting introduction to children's cartoon shows like, let's say, Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, Thundercats, and then you get into the actual episode and it's not even half as good as the introduction.
Yeah.
So that being said, I wonder if it's less false advertising to have more simplistic things on the cover because the animation inside of the piece is going to be a little more simplistic itself.
Yeah, the obnoxious cutesy box art bothers me less than let's add sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not try to jazz up something that's good already.
What they're probably doing when they do a box like that is they're saying that parents aren't going to buy it unless they're trying to trick the parents into buying it because they're afraid that the material is too dark, or even if it's not that it's too dark, that it's too adult in nature. That it's like kids are not immediately going to jump onto, or at least this is the mentality. Kids are not immediately going to jump onto, oh, let's watch a movie about like animals trying to immigrate. Like they're they're not going to appreciate the deeper, more thoughtful themes and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, like, I saw that movie when I was a kid and I liked that stuff. So I'm not saying that I necessarily appreciated the larger implications of it, but there was enough there to latch onto that as a kid I appreciated it, and also like it was dark and scary, but in a good way, I thought, or I think now, because that's a movie especially where you've got actions and consequences, and there's the violence is there for a reason. There's consequences to that violence. You're going to care more about those mice because there's these really scary cats that are after them, and those cats were freaking terrifying. They don't even look like cats. I mean, like, they're freaking terrifying. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on events. I feel like there's a whole video on this, though.
I would agree with that one. I mean, essentially, it's the difference between what's appropriate for the family and what's appropriate for children and adults. Because I feel like you go back far enough, we have things that are appropriate for the family, and right now people like it has to either be for kids or adults.
Well, with the box art, I think it's simpler than that. I think with the box art, it's just a matter of the companies thinking that if it doesn't look like that, nobody's going to buy it. So it's not even about what it actually is. It's just about how do you get them to get it off the shelf in the first place. And I don't know, man. I kind of think that most people, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I kind of think that like younger parents or kids that didn't grow up with that stuff and didn't know about that stuff, they're probably, especially when we get a few more years out, they're probably not going to immediately pick up on something they've never heard of and buy a movie if they've not seen it advertised, no matter what it is. I really do people do this, Vince? Do people go like, oh, that's a cute mice. I like cute mice. I'm going to buy this movie.
They do.
Is that a thing people do?
That's a thing people do.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then that's what they're playing on. That's what the merchandisers are playing on. They're saying, we've got to make it look cute. But then the problem with that is it is false advertising, and not only and I know what King's getting at, because sure, that's a movie I like too. What King's getting at is we are belittling we're dumbing down the material. We're not telling you what it really is, but also it's false advertising the other way, where the people that are buying it aren't getting what they thought they were getting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of problematic both directions. I don't know, man. I'm just saying that if you're gonna release it, if you're gonna have it out there, first of all, don't be George Lucas and change things. Leave it the way it was. People would like new, nice transfers of movies they used to like. So it's not just parents buying stuff for their kids. That's the first thing. Yeah. And then secondly, don't do it unless you really want to do it, unless you really believe in it. Well, not believe in it. That's a stupid thing to say for merchandisers trying to make money. Okay, but you know what I mean. Sell it on what it is, or sell something else. But maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know.
I literally have had people walk up to me and say, "Do you guys have any movies?" When I was working at retail establishments with movies, so do you guys have any movies about dogs? Do you guys have any movies about mermaids? My niece really likes mermaids. And I'm like, doesn't matter what it is.
We live in the internet age. You could go research that stuff. You could go jump on YouTube, watch some trailers, and then go figure out what you want to buy. Why do people not use what's right at their fingertips, Vince?
And sometimes they're old people that...
okay, that's fair.
They show up and they're like, my kid wants this, or my grandchild wants this thing called Chainsaw Lollipop. How old's your grandkid? Oh, he's like, I don't know, 11? Yeah, you don't want to buy this. Why? Yeah. I'm like, never mind. Here you go. I don't care. I really don't.
Moving right along, Eric Gutierrez. What do you think it takes for something to be a good continuation of a pre-existing work? For example, many Star Wars fans lamented the departure of the prequel trilogy from the original trilogy. My favorite examples off the top of my head, where it's done right, are Kong, King of Skull Island, and Conspiracy of the Planet of the Apes. Okay, what do you think, Vince? So, to be a good continuation of pre-existing work.
That's hard.
That's a big, broad, giant kind of,
There's an easy thing to say, which is it needs to have respect for what came before it, and it needs to not retcon stuff that, like the midichlorian thing, nobody liked. Why? Because you retconned it.
Because it changed the very nature of what the thing was.
Yeah.
Of not just what the Force was, but what the whole concept was.
So don't retcon stuff. It's like the big thing, but like one of the things that I keep going back to because I think it's so good is the Ghostbusters comic books. He has the voices down pat. You have to, and this is more of an ethereal thing, but you have to get down the feel of what came before. What made the original thing so good, and then don't duplicate that, but don't ignore that it existed.
Yeah.
So you're just trying to do something that exists within the same universe, that carries on a story. Your story has to stand on its own. It can't just be, let's add on to that previous story, because then you get like the every season past season 5 of Supernatural. So we're just going to keep adding on to this story, and it's never ending. Well, obviously it will, but still, it just keeps going until it becomes irrelevant entirely. Now, what do you think, Ep?
Well, and with that example, that's just a matter of that CW thing that we have with Smallville too, which is just this thing is popular and people are watching it, so we have to milk it for all it's worth. We've talked about this, but Dexter has that problem, things like that. But I don't know. My advice to if anybody was ever listening to me on this, my advice for people, especially going back to a thing that hasn't been dealt with in a while, and I think that's more of what we're alluding to with this question.
Like, say, Tron, maybe?
Well, and Star Wars. There's a bunch of years between that. Planet of the Apes, bunch of years between that. Yeah. Tron is the thing. Stay away from the cliches and the formula that has been done with a lot of bring a thing back from the dead that we haven't seen in 30 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So go back and watch all the movies that did that people didn't like, and don't do that. I mean, really, it's that simple. Stay away from certain trite kind of elements. Like you don't necessarily have to have an aging hero that's trying to get back in the saddle and do what he always used to do again, and find out that he has a kid that he didn't know he had. You don't have to do that story.
And then he punches him in the face.
You don't have to do that story again. You know what I mean? You can go a different way with it. Another good rule of thumb that doesn't always hold true, or I mean, like, you don't have to stick to this if you really know what you're doing. Stay away from prequels if you don't know what you're doing. And I mean, okay, how would you know until you tried it? But a lot of the time, prequels are really gimmicky. A lot of the time, it's just, wouldn't it be fun to go back and find out why things were the way they were? Well, maybe, but as you were talking about earlier, a lot of the time that's not what happens. A lot of the time, you have to change what a thing was, or people think that you have to change what a thing was, because it's harder to be authentic with that, right? It's harder to make something with hindsight knowing what happens in the future, because when you just straight up tell a story that is brand new and you don't have anything else around it, you don't know what happens in the future, and so you're not informed by the future. So to make a good prequel, you have to make something where it doesn't look like it's informed by the prequel. I mean, informed by what came after it because of what came before it. Like prequels need to stand on their own. They need to be a movie that you could watch even if you've never seen the thing that came after it. And if you
like, say,
my big
Monsters
rule of thumb,
Inc. or Monsters University, rather.
Yeah, and I think the new Planet of the Apes movies are a really good example of this, but they're also reimagining, so it doesn't exactly count, but you know what I mean. It's still a thing where we backtracked, but the storytelling's so good that I don't care. And actually, the storytelling's so good that they put me in a place where I'm actually very interested to see the origins of all of these things. It's very thought-provoking. So I don't know. With prequels, the rule of thumb I think ought to be if you're telling the story well, but you don't think that people we're like, it's not too informed by that stuff, but you don't think that people would watch it and find it interesting unless they had seen what happened after it, you don't have a story. So don't do that. I think the time to do a prequel is very rare.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's another full video. I'm gonna make some notes about which of these we should make complete videos about. All right. Sid Part 2. Hey, I've asked this on a few multi-topics and even suggested it as a full show, but I still haven't gotten an answer, and I really hope you guys get to it this time.
And you still won't.
Here we go. Yep. So, Mr. Goodplot asks,
that was really funny.
Which do you prefer to watch or read, etc.? Fiction with a character-centric focus, or fiction with a focus more toward metaphor? Vince?
Character. Because I need somebody driving something, and I need somebody making choices that influence, or that the plot is influenced by character choices. I've read too many things that are like, let's say, high schoolish fiction, where it's driven by metaphor and nothing's happening, and it's somebody walking around in their head, and like say they're at a funeral, or they're in a hospital, or they're some place, they're at a family reunion, and all they are is grumpy. And it doesn't matter what age they are, because when you get into these people's heads, you start just this self-loathing, and you can do this stuff and it'd be interesting.
And it's kind of just stream of consciousness stuff, or?
And I've read too much of that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, maybe what he's asking is things that happen within it that have significance because of the metaphor that applies to other things within it.
Well, here's the thing. All that is a subtext. And
precisely.
So my answer is a cop-out. My answer is both. I love really good character-driven fiction where it works on multiple levels, where people are three-dimensional and I care what happens to them, but then there are all of these underlying hidden kinds of messages and social commentary and things where, I have seen things, I'm not thinking of any good examples right now. Lost was almost a good example. There are places in Lost where this worked, but then overall I'm not sure that it totally panned out. But anyway, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But stories where individually, these characters come alive, are totally real, don't feel like just straight up archetypes. Most of the characters in that show seemed very real to me and were not, and that was the thing that kept me with it. But you know what else kept me with that show? All the literary references and analogies to things and places where there's a story playing out, but it's also I care about what's happening to the characters, but then also it's like a metaphor for this other thing. So no, you can do both of these things. And I think a lot of time metaphor is just a cop-out for not making something character-driven, where it's like, well, I am clever because you think you're reading about real people, but I'm actually showing you this, like, historical event that happened through some other context. Well, that's really cool. I like that. But make your people real. All at the same time. You can do both. And so, I don't know, because I think that when you don't do both, it stops being a story and it starts getting a lot closer to parable.
Yeah. Something kind of like an essay, maybe? Because I've seen those too.
And essays too, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm going to use Romero, and we're going to give you a little visual analog here.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to talk about whenever I see things like this is George A. Romero's zombie movies. And when it started, it was a little more character over metaphor, and now it's kind of gone the other direction. So his new stuff's not bad, it's just not as good as it used to be. And that's not to say that all of his old stuff was good, because his old zombie movies were good, but some of his other things, The Crazies was pretty awful, and that was more metaphor over character. But I do prefer character, and I do agree with Cap, but if you want a good example of like this degeneration, how these two things tend to separate in our minds, like apparently we think we can't do both of them at the same time, look at some of the later Romero stuff, look at some of the earlier Romero stuff.
Now, I will also say, because this is a complex question, I will also say that you want to stay away, as I said earlier with another question, from formula. You don't want to say every piece of art must have these things or it's not good. For me, I like to take everything case by case. So, have I seen things that are really kind of more just straight up metaphor, and especially when we're talking about things that are more like melodramas than real dramas, you know what I mean? And still like them, yes. A lot of it has to do with how confident it is in its presentation, whether or not it understands what it's doing, right? Yeah. So I am going to resist a story that is pure metaphor and there's really nothing to the people that I'm following, and there's not, any real character arcs or, any of the things we like to talk about with fiction, if the story is presenting itself like it's that. You see what I'm saying? That's when it's really problematic. But you can't tie art's hands behind its back. You can't say in order to be a good piece of art, you must. We can't have innovation if we do that. You know what I mean? So if we were to say you can't just do a metaphorical thing, then we're cutting out all experimental fiction, and I don't think we can entirely do that. So it just depends on what it's presenting itself as. But
there is a difference between film that is art and an art film. So you can have, and often this case is, that narrative films are art. And when we talk about films, when we talk about movies, we tend to talk about narrative pieces.
Yeah.
But there are such things that are not narrative pieces, that are film, that are not intended to have any narrative or character or story at all. It's just, these are a grouping of images that are supposed to create a feeling or present an idea to you. And,
like a painting.
Yeah. And
it's
just
just doing
entirely
it through
okay.
moving pictures, and I think that's valid.
Yeah,
but it's got to know that that's what it is. It can't present itself like it's traditional fiction. That's what I'm getting at.
I completely agree. There's a little museum out here called the Nerman Museum of Art, and they have it's in JCCC. CCCCC.
Yeah.
So they have a room that you go in, and what's funniest to me is that there's one bench in the back. There's no other seats in this whole room, but there's a wall that they project a movie on. So often there's some art movie, and they just play it. You can just walk in there. You don't have to tickets or anything. You just go in. Movie starts, and I support that. Make an art film, whatever. Just don't think that just because you made a film, it has a narrative.
Yeah. An example...
Or a literary narrative, maybe I'll say that.
Yeah. An example exactly. An example that I'll use that's close to this, it's not pure metaphor, but it's more just playing out, like psychological and philosophical themes, of course. And I've talked about this 1,000 times, but is The Matrix, and that's a film where are these characters mostly kind of just archetypes? Yeah. Do I like them anyway? Kind of despite that? Yeah. I mean, like that. So that's a weird sort of case, right? Where you're mostly just seeing philosophical arguments and ethical arguments, especially, being played out on screen. And yet it's presented in such a way where it's so entertaining that I know if it's breaking rules, I know what rules it's breaking, but I don't mind it. It's like I find that to be an exception because I think it knows exactly what it's doing, and so it is kind of using its characters as pieces that are representative of something. But then that's an example where I thought that worked.
Fair enough.
Mr. Goodplot, what is one geeky thing you are 100% certain you will never get into?
That I will never get into?
Yeah.
Sailor Moon. Never.
Can I have that one too?
Sure.
Can I have that one?
You love Sailor Moon.
I agree with Dragon Ball Z.
Yep, I'm with you.
And I'm going to have a plethora of emails after this where people are going to be... Because I get requests all the time to review Dragon Ball Z things, and I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm not interested.
Don't like it.
I mean, I'm not saying I won't ever give it a chance. Maybe I'll give it a chance, but I don't see myself getting into it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe I caught, in episode one time, and it just wasn't my thing. You know what I mean? Like, just the style didn't appeal to me. And then when I hear people say how, incredibly drawn out and molasses the pacing is, I'm like, well, I'm really not interested. But you know what I mean? Like, that's a thing I probably will never get. But I don't want to ever say never, because there are lots of things that I thought I would never have any interest in. One of them was Planet of the Apes, and last week changed my whole world with that. And then, I'm going to have to do something on Planet of the Apes at some point, because, wow, that it went from, I don't care, I don't want to ever watch this, to in my top 10 list of all sci-fi films ever made.
Holy smokes.
So good, yeah. Have you ever watched the original 1968 Planet of the Apes?
I saw the first one, yeah.
Oh, God, it's just really, really interesting. Good. What a good film. I never watched it. I stayed away from it. I thought it was boring. It was going to be boring, and I wasn't interested. And what is wrong with me? Why did I never do that? I think what happened was I saw a little bit of it when I was a kid, and I think what happened was I saw the ending. And I was like, well, now that I know the ending, what is the point of watching this? And from what people had said, it always seemed like it was just a movie that built up to an ending, and it was like really boring. But then you get to the ending, and you're like, holy crap, the ending's amazing, so that makes the movie good. No, the whole thing is like really interesting.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Anyway,
but it's kind of like Soylent Green. The ride there is good, but the ending, if you hadn't seen it, is so shocking.
But what was weird was, even though I knew it, it still hit me in a place. I mean, that's one of the reasons I liked it so much, was that, in the context of the film, it was still, a really gripping and emotional moment. And, I don't know. I'm almost more impressed when a big, giant, surprise reveal affects me when I knew what it was.
Yeah.
But other things, I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, because you have context. But yeah, anyway, there's a thing from each of us that we'll probably never get into. I don't want to ever say never, though.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to make you watch some Sailor Moon, I guess.
I guess you're going to be watching some more Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. Will Hohenstein, do you think a good story-driven Spider-Man game will be made within the next 10 years or ever? Well...
Ever? Sure. 10 years? I have no idea.
We've gotten some things that are close. I haven't played the game that came out after Shattered Dimensions that Peter David wrote, but I heard
Edge of Time?
Edge of Time, but I heard that was really a good story. Peter David wrote that, and I liked what I played of Shattered Dimensions, and Dan Slott wrote that, and I mean, it wasn't super story-driven. I suppose that is a thing where it was kind of just getting you to the next level. So I guess there was some of that. But, I don't know. I mean...
Good job, Dan Slott.
Okay, so we haven't had the Arkham City of Spider-Man games yet. Will that ever happen? Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know. I would not be surprised if somebody at least made the attempt.
I think we need the Arkham Asylum of Spider-Man games first. So.
But I feel like Shattered Dimensions was that.
Well... I mean, I feel like we need something that's about Spider-Man, not about, the varying different Spider-Mans from different dimensions. I mean,
you're right, because that's more about the lore and mythology, and really more about the fans than
don't overreach if you're trying to make a good story. Like Shattered Dimensions was fun. Why? Because I've read all that stuff. I mean, not all of it, but I've read at least pieces of each thing, so I knew what was going on. So
it was very novelty, yeah.
Yeah, it was strictly, look, I get to play as Noir Spider-Man. That's cool. But that was really it for me.
For me, it was $20.99. It turned us both into baby seals.
Yay! Which $20.99 I think was probably the most fun to play in that game.
Sure.
Because I quickly got I didn't get annoyed, but I got kind of bored playing the Noir Spider-Man thing.
Me too. I didn't like that. Well, it was trying to be Arkham Asylum, really.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't unfun, but it got tedious after a little bit.
Well, that's part of the problem there, too, though, is that, like, the Arkham games seemed pretty original. I mean, certainly they're derived from some things, but I mean, like, you know, it created its own engine, and that game did some of that, but you could see a lot of influence from Batman on that game, so...
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know. What would they have to do to set themselves apart? That's a good question. Okay, Kyle Huffman, if you were a video game developer, how would you design a Superman video game? I'd make a Green Arrow game instead. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Green Arrow game sounds fun.
We've talked about this before, and I think I even brought up Green Arrow there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do. So the thing, okay, so we've heard people over the years say, I don't like Superman because he's too powerful and I can't relate to him. And I don't have that problem in fiction, but I kind of have the he's too powerful problem with video games, or at least developers seem to have had this problem with video games. How do you make it still Superman and make it a challenging game?
I would do Superman Shattered Dimensions. Where I say that jokingly, but I'm serious.
Superman Red and Superman Blue simultaneously.
Oh my God, that's a great idea. So he's like, no,
it's not. It's a horrible. They're Siamese twins, and I mean, you could do a co-op thing where one's red and one's blue, but yeah,
they're super twins. So the.
Okay, you say your thing, and then I finally have an answer to this question. I do. I have an answer to this question.
I would really do like Superman throughout the ages, and I would start. And I would go back and forth between the different ages. And I would try to develop some kind of through line. I don't know, time travel, maybe there's some kind of link. Maybe Vandal Savage is the link. I don't know. But you go back to like the Fleischer Age Superman. And you go to... Well, of course, he wasn't the comic book guy. But let's move on. You go do some of that stuff where all he can do is leap around. Where he's, faster than and stronger than and blah blah, and those are his power sets.
Yeah,
and that's where you start.
And so you have varied power sets for different sections. Yeah, okay.
You progressively move into it. So one, if your flying system doesn't work so
by level 17, you're juggling planets.
So maybe the ultra powerful Superman is like this mythical being that can do anything.
Yeah.
He can trap people in S's and stuff, and he's so powerful. And maybe he's somebody
zone projector in his belt.
Maybe yes. Maybe he's this guy that you never play. Maybe you play against him. Maybe he's the person that's traveling through time. So you get this like mockery or this homage to the idea, I'm not sure, take your pick, of the overpowered Superman. And then throughout the piece you get people who are a little more focused on each thing. So and the other thing you need to do is develop a flying system that's fun. I mean,
seriously.
Superman Returns got close for the flying system.
Camera angle issues with that game, man.
So, I mean, control of the camera to where you're not looking everywhere, because that's a problem with flying games. And then control of your character. I don't want to have to really work at making sure this guy hits 200 rings before I can go fight Brainiac. So
yeah, get rid of the busy work stuff, you know? You need, and of course everybody said this, but you need an Arkham Asylum, Arkham City kind of system in that you need to make a brand new system that works solely for Superman. You see what I'm saying? So it shouldn't be anything like those games, but I mean, you need to start from scratch, start from the ground up, and figure out what the system would be. And I think probably not as much combat. Like I feel like my instincts tell me that a good Superman game would be a lot more of like, I don't know, almost maybe like an investigating kind of thing, or like something. And this is coming from somebody that when I play video games, I hate having to go find things, but make it. Do like your Clark Kent sometimes, your Superman sometimes kind of thing, and maybe make it like really story driven, so that you have to like make. I just thought of this, where you have to like make choices of when to be what identity, and sometimes if you're Clark in the wrong place because you needed to be Superman, like your secret identity gets out, and then that's not good, or vice versa, like you needed to be Clark but you were Superman instead, or something like that. I don't know what exactly it would be, but the first thing that came to my mind, Vince, was did you ever play Rampage?
Oh yeah.
We need Doomsday Rampage. That's what we need. We need a Death of Superman game where you can play as Superman or Doomsday. That's what we need. And
that sounds like fun.
We need a game where a collateral damage is what you're supposed to do. And no, I'm only mildly joking. But I think a game based on Death of Superman is what we should do. And I know that, like, this is coming from the guy whose favorite Superman thing is Death of Superman, and I didn't care about Superman until we killed him. But with the Death of Superman game, you could get the very power sets that you're talking about, because you could play as all four of the different Supermen after Superman dies. So
that would be even cooler.
But also Superman has his regular power set, but he's going up against something that's impossible to defeat. So like you still can have your cake and eat it too with that, and then you're playing these different characters, some who have very Kryptonian powers, and some who, like Steel, don't have really any powers. So like I don't know, something like that I think would work. And of course, we did a beat 'em up on the Super Nintendo and Genesis like that, but like, why don't we just take that game and make a sophisticated 3D platformer out of it? And that's what I would do, 3D adventure kind of game.
I would also make the powers relevant to all the stuff you're doing and make them manageable.
Yeah.
So, and I would also make the game task driven.
And that's hard just because there's so many powers. Yeah. I would also say, how about some powers we just are used automatically and we don't have to use them? Like, let's not deal with like super hearing. Let's just have that be a plot point.
I would
things like that.
I wouldn't mind dealing with super hearing depending on how you do it. Like, you could use it like a radar sense. So you
could do it like the investigating things in Arkham City, right? Like
you can focus your senses. So you can use your 1,000-mile stare, or you can use your super hearing.
Okay.
And then if you focus your senses and you look for that particular thing, like focus on Lois's voice, then you can like target where she is. So that takes you to the next thing.
Yeah, and actually, that would make it kind of like Arkham City, because you've got all those places in Arkham City where like your radio picks up on something, and then you or maybe it picks up on multiple things. You have to decide which thing you want to go do, and that's how you get side missions and things. So we could use super hearing and super vision that way. Well, Vince, we haven't done nearly enough questions, so we're gonna make this video longer than it's supposed to be.
All right.
Yeah. So stick with us here for a few more minutes.
I'm kind of excited about our Superman games.
The multi-topic Doomsday Rampage. Tell your friends.
Superman Shattered Dimensions.
Frank Miller's Evil Hat. My question is that it seems like female characters are getting a better deal than they were 5 years ago, when it seemed like the norm for them was to be victimized and killed. I noticed Bendis and Miller did a lot of this. Do you think that's true, that today they are better treated, and that if 5 years ago that was really a problem, or if it was even the norm? 52 didn't help.
Yeah.
At first.
I mean, agreed.
And there have been, some things in 52 that have been better since it started, but I would say that that did seem to be the general consensus, was that if we're just talking about comic books, and it seems like we are, even just 5 years ago we weren't really treating female characters the way we ought to, that we didn't have enough female characters we liked in prominent places. Like, for me, it's not even, I guess there is some sexist stuff there, but for me, a lot of it is more just, you got really good characters, mind them. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff where it's just, we're not giving characters we like books, and then now you get to Marvel, and there's a lot of solo female books, and most of them are really good. I don't know. Yeah, I think he's right about that. I think we are starting to. Well, and here's what's important about it. what's positive about this is that we're not just going, okay, people are complaining because women seem to be thrown under the bus in comic books because we think comic books are mostly for guys, so we're mostly killing them off, or we're just not giving them anything interesting to do. And instead of just saturating us with really lame generic female characters to try to appease people, we're actually doing it right now, at least over at Marvel. Like, you know, one of the most popular characters right now is Miss Marvel, and that's a situation where people aren't liking it just because it's a girl and it's a minority. It's that it seems real, and so we can go, yay, it's a book that everybody likes, it's really fun to read, and we're kind of satisfying that thing of we need more diversity. I can't get on the diversity bandwagon if it's just that, like, we feel like we have some kind of responsibility, so we have to, like, shoehorn these characters in places and make them really stereotypical and stuff. I think that's backwards. I think that hurts the notion of diversity, right? Like, what it ought to be is people who actually know something about what they're writing or writing these characters, and so we're not even thinking about, oh, it's this Middle Eastern character. It's interesting that she's Middle Eastern because they take that culture and build it into the book, and they don't just make her whatever, like you know, some idiot white guy who doesn't know anything about that part of the world might write that character because of the couple of things he's read in the news about Middle Eastern people. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Am I making any sense at all?
Yeah, like Greg Rucka made Batwoman a lesbian, not because he just wanted to have a lesbian character, but rather because
not for
he felt
shock
like
value or to be progressive.
It satisfies some notion of the character that he thinks is interesting. So that's the thing, though, is you got to just make a female character or utilize a female character.
That's all I'm saying.
And make them a person.
Be bold with it. Like, I don't think it's bold to go, we've got to do like gay characters or minority characters just because there's not enough of them. I feel like if there's not enough of them is your only reason for it, you're probably going to do it wrong. You know, I mean, maybe your heart's in the right place because you're wanting to, you know, give people more of what they want. You know, you're you know, minority readers might kind of wish that they were more represented, but they're not going to want to be represented by stereotypes.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that, again, I'll bring back Romero. I realize this isn't comic books or even current, but one of the things that people freaked out about and were so pleased about with that movie when it came out was that the main character was black and it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Nobody mentioned it in the movie. It wasn't... They didn't have a problem with him because it was black. It wasn't like, wow, I'm so glad that us white people and them black people can get together and we can be friends. No, it wasn't like that. Why? Because that's stupid. So it's, why are you going to make
They didn't have to make a message out of it.
And people are like, this is progressive.
But at the same time...
Because they didn't, it was just two people. It didn't have to be white or black.
Now, I don't think we have to ignore ethnicity.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think we have to say, okay, we have to make white people and black people all necessarily act exactly the same way just so that we're not calling attention to it.
Culture is relevant.
People from different places act different ways, you know? Yes,
I know people from, let's say, Pennsylvania who act very different from the way I do.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're from different parts of the country. So it's people from different whereabouts act differently. People with different backgrounds act differently. It was about women. And the
video games. Oh.
Denny O'Neil. Was it video games?
No.
Okay. I got confused for a second. So Denny O'Neil. I was watching a documentary the other day where Denny O'Neil said that he was all for civil rights, and when feminism came along, and where at least that's what he said. I think what he meant was that when he first had the notion about feminism presented to him when he was a young writer, he said he supported all these other civil rights movements, so he thought, I should support this too. And he said, so he was there for it in like verbalizing it, but he wasn't actually ready for it. He said he was about 5 years away from embracing it. So that's interesting that somebody can look back on their life being in the comic book industry and acknowledging that over the years we start doing these other things. Now we start recognizing that people are just people. And
sure.
And there was a comic book historian in this documentary that I was watching, and he said that when he was a young guy and he was black, and he said in Spider-Man was in a mixed race school and would just say, "Hey, how you doing?" to one of the other black guys. They're like, "Hey, Pete, what's going on?" And he said that was enough for him. Why? Because you just acknowledged it. You didn't have to make a thing about it. It was Pete can be friends with a black guy. Why not? So,
I think what's encouraging about women being better portrayed in comics is that we've got more women reading comics and they're looking for something. So it seems like maybe we're starting to wise up a little bit, at least in certain pockets. And going, well, let's, we don't have to write things that's like really prissy and go, this is for women, but just finding people that know how to, do good, compelling female characters with, like you said, without making a thing out of it.
Yeah.
That's it. So, anyway.
I love that we're coming down on this by saying, don't make a thing out of it.
Don't make a thing out of it.
Make a person out of it.
Yeah, just tell good stories. All right, this is from the Vacuuminator. I know you can only do one of these, so I'm just going to fire 3 best shots, and you can pick whichever one you like best. Okay, let's see here. These look short. After seeing Transformers 4, I was somewhat shocked at the small but very noticeable jump in quality story-wise. I had the same reaction to it.
I didn't see it.
We are incrementally improving on those movies.
You went from to...
I have to ask, do you guys think it's possible that right now toy movies are simply going through a teething period right now, much like comic movies were during the late 80s and 90s? In the last 5 to 10 years, we will go from expecting to see a good toy movie rather than being surprised by it like we have with comic movies ever since Iron Man and The Dark Knight. What an insightful question.
Yeah, and I like that he said teething.
Teething, yeah.
That's really interesting.
Goodness.
Do I think that they are going through a teething period? I have no idea.
I have no idea either. There's a whole video on this. This is a cool question.
Because I feel like for years and years people have been making movies out of video games
and that hasn't happened yet.
And that's the thing, though, is that, well, actually, I kind of like the not Resident Evil, the Silent Hill movie. There are ones and dones.
The question is, have we had the Dark Knight or the Iron Man of video game movies?
No,
we have not.
So, I'm thinking that...
I don't think. If you think you know what the Dark Knight or the Iron Man of video game movies is, leave that in the comments. But I don't think we've seen that yet.
I'm with you. But I think that video game movies and toy movies are in the same boat on this one. That you could make a good one. Will they make a good one? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Because, I get kind of tired of seeing crappy Transformers things. And I would have said earlier that Transformers was in my list of things that I could never get into, but you could probably convince me to get into some Transformers things. I've just never seen anything that really piqued my interest, and I've watched a lot of Transformers things because this is a thing that I get like, not necessarily hate mail about, but people are saying things like, Vince, why can't you like Transformers? It's so good. You're a bad person. And then and then I'll say, well, I'll try it, and then I'll watch the thing they recommend, and I go, this is still not good to me. So, cartoon or movie or otherwise.
Well, you're about to get the same thing with Sailor Moon.
Yeah, so. But I think there's probably less Sailor Moon fans in our fan base than there are Transformers fans.
But probably not Dragon Ball Z.
No, that's true.
Vince, based on what happened with Superhero, I feel somewhat confident in saying that, are you scratching your monkey cranium?
Yeah, so my head just itched so much all of a sudden.
Based on what... How you doing, Dr. Zayas? Based on what happened with Superhero, I feel somewhat confident in saying that as soon as the thought-provoking movie based on toys comes out and blows everyone away with how with how engaging, entertaining, but also, like I said, thought-provoking it is. That it makes people think, and it makes people think, importantly, differently about these kinds of movies. That everybody else has to set their game up. And because that's what happened with Dark Knight and Iron Man, and it helped that they both happened in the same year. And I'm not saying that every superhero film after that has been at that level, but do people expect them now to be closer to that level? Yes, they do. So I think that as soon as we get a movie like that for a toy movie, it's too bad we're not getting that with Ninja Turtles. That would have been a good step in that direction. Because yes, I know Ninja Turtles was not initially based on toys, but the cartoon was. So the thing that everybody that everybody when we were kids really latched onto, and the thing that made Turtles the huge phenomenon it was toys. So I do kind of feel like if we had a really, really, really solid Ninja Turtle movie that broke huge box office records, and we'll see what the new one's really going to be like, and see if it is going to be like Transformers at all, but I'm just saying that, like, if that happened, that could be a thing that could help us move Transformers and things like that in a somewhat more intelligent direction.
I think it's kind of
compelling direction.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the nature of the beast, to where you're saying, I just need to get every one of these characters that was ever made into a toy into this movie, and then the sequels become about, well, what engine can we start up that will allow me to get more of these characters into this movie?
Yeah.
And then you get things like Transformers, then you get things like the Wolverine, but, not the Wolverine, Wolverine Origins.
Yeah.
My apologies. Scratch that.
You should apologize to the Wolverine for that.
Yeah, the Wolverine's not that bad. It's okay. But
it's not bad at all. It's quite good.
Anywho, so any Doctor Who. Then, I mean, essentially what you're saying is that you need to have somebody that will consider a character and develop a story from a character. I wouldn't even necessarily have a problem retconning whatever story Mattel came up for for He-Man. Like, you could probably make a good Masters of the Universe movie. You just gotta try. So, I just don't think that they've tried yet. That's my thing.
What kind of process do you guys? By the way, Vac, that was a really good. That was a really good question. Wow. What kind of process do you guys generally have for making your videos from concept to editing? I mean, there's a whole video there. Maybe eventually we could do one on that. I don't know how interesting that is. But there's basically two, and then there's Spawn Year. But there's basically two. It's the scripted videos and the off the cuff videos. So the process for a video like this is we turn a camera on and we talk, and then I put it in the computer, and then I put the logos in the front and a logo on the back, and then that's pretty much the process. And I mean, like sometimes there's discussion, and there's some writing down stuff and things that Vince and I do a little bit of prep sometimes, but
yeah, and the things that we're into are also the things that we talk about on the channel. So
yeah, so a lot of
we do a little prep work beforehand.
Yeah, but also a lot of what we do on the channel is just what we'd be doing anyway. I mean, that's a lot of how we started this. Was we said, well, we really enjoyed just having long conversations about geeky things. Why don't we just film it and put it on the internet? And so like what you see us do, it is work and it is not work all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to go to dinner with us and just be a fly on the wall, we would be talking about largely the same stuff. The only difference is I would be uncensored. That's all it is. And all the times where I go, would be replaced with, FS and such and what. But
and such and what.
Yeah, because, just fill that in with your imagination.
I told Vince a long time ago that he could not say and such and what on the channel. And such and what. So, you're pretty much getting, when you see, if you talk to Vince and I outside of YouTube, you're pretty much getting a YouTube video. I mean, that's, but then the unscripted
true.
Things, Rewind and such, it's a process of taking pictures out of a video with I do it with a couple pieces of software, but it's pretty much just kind of screen grab software, and then I write the thing, and it depends on the film. Like some things I'll watch once for the review if I know it really well, and other things I'll give a couple of watches, and I do various degrees of research just depending on what it is and what direction I feel like going with it. Some things because I do literary analysis, so story analysis, so some things require more historical research and other sorts of research than other things do, because if I'm just talking about the story and another story pretty confidently, I don't really have to do a ton, so it just depends on what it is. So like Watchmen, I spent a month on, like I did a lot of research on that because I wanted to, I just had a lot I wanted to do with that. But anyway, so it just depends on what it is. And then, you put the, you record your audio, you put that in the, in your Sony Vegas, and you link up all your pictures based on what you're saying. And you have to, one of the things you have to do something like this is you have to get really okay with listening to yourself. Some people don't like to do that. Some people don't like what their voice sounds like. They don't like to listen to themselves. I've been doing this for 6 years now, and I hear my own voice through speakers more than I hear anybody else's anymore, and I'm very used to it now. And so anyway, so I don't know. But maybe at some point we'll talk more about that if there's anything really interesting to talk about. The process for Spawn here is kind of interesting with certain things. So anyway, well, that's it for today. We want to say thanks a bunch for all your questions. We have a bunch more questions to go through. I am very impressed with the questions this time, Vince. Lots of really interesting, insightful. It's okay, Zayas. Lots of really interesting, insightful, surprising things, kind of blindsiding me here and there. With some of these questions. So good on you guys. Way to think. Way to be thinkers. Fantastic. And
you even got some hot button issues in this one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Man, and I apologize if I went too far with any of that.
And teething.
Yeah, teething. Cool. Anyway, well, thanks always for watching. We sure appreciate it. We'll be back with you again next week with another episode of the Multi-Topic Extravaganza. Feel free to leave questions on our personal message, as a personal message, or feel free to leave questions on the announcement video. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And we will see you next week.